Undocumented residents, commonly referred to as illegal immigrants, are often viewed as a nuisance in the United States. Protesters shout, "Close the borders," and "Americans before illegals" to combat this faceless mass of migrants, who are labeled as a threat to the American dream and the jobs which, rightfully, according to these protesters, belong to Americans. However, this often amorphous, faceless crowd of undocumented residents is made up of a vast number of individuals. And these individuals aren't just a conformant to a stereotype. Each of these people have their own face and their own story, motivations, hopes, goals, and their own version of the American dream. For many, America is the land of opportunity, a place where one can pull themselves up and rise above their circumstances for a better life. For many migrants, such opportunity is not offered in their home countries, and the chance to rise above one's circumstances outweighs the risks posed by illegally migrating to the United States. To better understand these desperate situations of many, let's hear about the stories of some of these individuals. Nsambo, 39, fled from Cameroon to the United States illegally to escape imprisonment from a political roundup. He notes that, "In Cameroon, a long time ago, I was taken to jail for nothing. I was lucky not to disappear or die." He was in search of a sanctuary, a place of safety where one could work hard and make a new life for himself. However, Nsambo discovered the harsh reality of being an undocumented immigrant in the United States, saying at one point, "Now I have learned that if you do not belong to any strong group in the US, you can find yourself in a similar situation." They call it detention in the US, but it is a jail. Imprisoned due to his undocumented status, Nsambo faced the American justice system, but without the rights of an American citizen. When facing deportation hearings, Nsambo remarks that the judge will decide. You can be deported without ever being heard.
A boy walks through the Mexican desert. The hot afternoon sun beats down on him on the third day of what was supposed to be a 4-hour journey. His grandmother walks increasingly slowly beside him, the only source of hope he has other than the idea of his life in the United States with his mother. They were there to protect one another from the many threats undocumented border crossing entails. In a small, silent group of strangers, she collapses, never to get up, the exertion too much for her. He shouts for help, but it's too late. In moments like those, in the words of his uncle, you don't know whether to scream, to run, to cry, or to throw yourself on the floor, because in that moment, the entire bright dream that has taken a hold of you, guided you forward through the darkest of times, just disappears.
Abel was 12 when he fled his home in Guatemala to Mexico, fearing for his and his family's safety. Dedicated to providing for his family, he crossed the desert for days with little food and water. With every step, Abel kept thinking to himself, "I have to live, I have to live." Abel was an immigrant who spoke zero English and little Spanish because his native language was Quiche, the native language of Guatemala. His young age and illiteracy in Spanish and English denied Abel work once he reached the U.S. People told him, "You're so young, go to school," and he slept most nights on the streets. Once Abel made his way across the country to New Bedford, Massachusetts, he worked gutting fish and eating the scraps. He continued to work hard and hoped that his family back in Guatemala would be better provided for and better protected. Abel was constantly bombarded with drugs and alcohol and received little pay, much under minimum wage, only a few bucks an hour, working long and difficult 18-hour days. "My whole life has been work. I didn't have a single right," Abel recounted. Whenever Abel spoke up about his rights, he was beaten. Abel also had to balance relentless work-related problems with avoiding immigration. Abel's fishing factory was raided by immigration officers who flew helicopters overhead and released dogs that searched the building. Luckily, Abel decided not to go to work that day, but he was asked to leave his job. As all the Guatemalans walked away from the fishing factory, his boss yelled, "You are criminals! You have a bad rap in this country!" Abel was living in a constant state of fear. Abel fathered a child who is an American, and Abel dreams that his son can visit his family one day in Guatemala. Abel has never felt Guatemalan, and even though he doesn't have papers, he feels American. He demands his rights because immigrants are suffering, not just physically, but psychologically.
Unfortunately, the undocumented immigrants of the United States often go without a voice. Marginalized and ignored, these people, like Abel, Nsambo, and others, remain unheard. However, there are many efforts in the USA to help lend a voice to marginalized groups such as undocumented immigrants.
Marisol came to the U.S. at a very early age. Her parents paid for men to make them fake immigration papers, and they were able to pass through the border. As a young child, she was the smartest in her class. Her academic achievements carried her all the way to Rutgers University, Newark, where she pursued a degree in law. She said that if she wasn't bright, no one would have cared. She always felt protected as a model student. In college, people would say she had been whitewashed, brown on the outside and white on the inside, because of her education. Through her whole life, she was always very open about being undocumented. Even in her first parent-teacher conference, Marisol told the teacher, "Do you know that we're illegal?" as her mother quietly hushed her up. Now in college, Marisol tells the student body, "As I got older, I found myself needing to share my story and needing to talk about it." Marisol has deep passion for her Mexican heritage and her family's story. She says, "I am fighting to not let our history disappear." She expresses a deep love for her father, who is undocumented and works very hard to support the family and guide the family. "If anyone deserves to be here, it is him," she says. One reason she says she's in law school is that she hopes she can help her father fight deportation if it ever comes up. Marisol has a deep compassion for her family and wants what's best for them. Her openness about her status as undocumented has compelled her to fight for residency for undocumented workers. Marisol has been living her dream as she attends college to become a lawyer, but she knows that her family and other Mexican families in the U.S. don't have the luxury of a college education, and she has a great compassion towards them and helping them achieve what she has achieved.
In recent years, at the University of California, Davis, which has an undocumented student population of nearly 200, a Center for Undocumented Students has opened. Founded by undocumented students who felt uncomfortable and voiceless in the UC Davis community, the Undocumented Student Center now provides a place for the typically marginalized and unrepresented to have a place to feel safe. Additionally, having the center on campus makes undocumented students have a clear voice and presence on campus.
Much like Enrique's journey, one of the best ways to understand undocumented immigration is not through graphs or statistics, but through people's stories and personal experiences. The story of illegal immigration is not a straightforward narrative. It's an endless collection of varying experiences among a diverse group of individuals. For these immigrants, voice is the most important tool in order for them to fully experience and live out the American dream. Just as falling off of trains, getting beaten, and robbed multiple times didn't stop Enrique from meeting his mother, pain, suffering, and racism have not stopped other immigrants from pursuing a better life in America. These individuals persevere through the daunting challenges which many of us can never fathom, and often at an incredibly young age. Abel, Enrique, Marisol, and many others like them see America as their saving grace, an opportunity to rise above their circumstances, but often don't realize that life in America isn't as great as they imagine due to battles against authorities who try to crush their chances at rising up. Fighting for a better life, the American dream, pushes these people to demand their rights and voice their concerns for undocumented people everywhere.